Anniversary. I left work 3 hours early. My colleagues in the office started ribbing me to treat them. I laughed and said I'd make it up to them another day, my mind already planning the surprise for Sue-Won. On the way, I stopped by that French pastry shop she'd mentioned several times, the one in the south of the city. I waited in line specially to buy her favorite opera cake. The pink velvet box felt heavy in my hands. Holding my entire afternoon, I pushed open the door to our apartment. Her heels weren't by the entrance. The living room curtains were drawn, the light dim, and the air carried a cold, empty smell. Like no one had lived here for a while. I put the cake on the dining table and lit the scented candle she liked. As the flame flickered to life, I glanced at our wedding photo on the wall. In it, Sue-Won was smiling sweetly, her eyes curving into little moons. I was holding her by the waist, feeling like I had the whole world in my arms. Back then, I swore I would make her smile like that forever. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch to wait. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. My phone screen lit up and dimmed. Over and over, I sent her 3 texts asking when she'd be back and if she wanted me to pick her up. The messages sank like stones into the sea. Not even a read receipt, a T 8.30. I finally called. It rang 5 times before she picked up. The background noise was chaotic, like a cocktail party. People laughing, glasses clinking. Hello. Her voice sounded distant, slightly distorted through the receiver. Where are you? I tried to keep my tone normal. Today is. I know. She cut me off, her voice flat. The company has an emergency project. I can't get away. Go ahead and eat without me. Don't wait up. I bought the cake. Your favorite. The opera. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Then she let out a soft laugh, as if amused. Lin Shun, just eat it yourself. I'm pretty busy here. Click. The dial tone buzzed in my ear for a long time. I stared at the cake on the table. The ribbon on the velvet box was tied perfectly. I had asked the clerk to do it specially. I'm not great at tying those things, but thinking about her expression when she unwrapped it made it worthwhile. Now the box sat there quietly. Like a joke. I put it in the fridge and ate instant noodles by myself. The steam from the broth clouded my face, and my eyes stung a little. Some mindless variety show played on TV. The studio audience's laughter rolling in waves. But I couldn't hear any of it. Sue-Won wasn't always like this. When we first got together, she'd blow up my phone with dozens of texts if I worked even a little late, asking if I'd eaten. If I was tired, she'd wait for me in that tiny rented apartment until late at night. And the moment she heard my keys in the lock, she'd throw herself at me for a hug, her whole body warm and soft like a little kitten. Back then, I swore I'd give her the best life. I worked like crazy, climbing from a junior programmer to CTO. I bought this apartment in the city center and put the deed in her name alone. I thought we were happy, but somewhere along the way, she started coming home late. She grew short with me. I told myself it was the 7-year itch, a normal phase in marriage. I tried to surprise her, plan trips, but her reactions grew more and more perfunctory. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see her turned away from me, her face lit by her phone screen. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly, like she was chatting with someone. I told myself not to overthink it. Trust is the foundation of marriage. Then one night, Sue-Won went to take a shower. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I didn't mean to look, but the name on the screen made me freeze. Muyi. The message was only 4 words. Thinking of you. Good night. My hands started shaking. I opened the chat history. They hadn't deleted a thing. It went back 2 years. Nearly every single day. At first, it was small talk, pleasantries. Then it grew flirtatious. She called him Muyi. He called her Wan. They talked about music, movies, the tree-lined boulevard at their university. She wrote, back then, when I sat on the back of your bike, I thought the wind itself tasted sweet. I scrolled to her birthday last year. I had booked a table at a revolving restaurant. She said she had to work, but the chat showed her having dinner with Zhou Muyi. She wrote, the Japanese place you picked is way better than those restaurants Lin Shan always finds. He replied, what does he know? She sent a smiley face. My finger was still on the screen, but I felt nothing. Like all the strength had been drained from me, from my chest outward, inch by inch. I went cold. 2 years. 2 years of our marriage. She'd been with this man for 2 years. When Sue-Won came out of the bathroom, her hair was still wet. She was wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her, a towel draped over her shoulder. She saw me holding her phone and froze. Then her face changed. You went through my phone. Her first reaction was accusation. In that moment, something inside me shattered completely. Who is Zhou Muyi? I asked. I heard my own voice, eerily calm. like the dead stillness before a storm. She bit her lip, her eyes darting away for a moment. Then she lifted her head and looked directly at me. That it's better that you know. She said, yes, we're together. No, I should say. I've always loved him. What about me? I felt something lodged in my throat. Impossible to swallow or spit out. We were together for 4 years. Married for 3. What was I to you? She was silent for a long time. Droplets of water fell from her hair onto the wooden floor. 1 drop. 2 drops. Lin Shun. She finally said, her voice soft but clear. I thought time would smooth everything over. That I could learn to love you. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at you, I wondered what it would be like if it were Mu Yi. I can't lie to myself anymore. So you lied to me for 2 years. That I'm sorry. She said. Those 3 words fell so lightly, like a pebble dropped into a deep well. With no echo. I didn't speak to her again that night. I slept on the living room couch, staring at the crack in the ceiling, and never closed my eyes. The next day, I called in sick. I didn't go to the office, and I didn't stay home. I drove alone to the park where we had our first date. I sat on a bench, staring at the lake. A young couple walked past me. The boy bought the girl an ice cream cone, and she kissed him on the cheek, laughing. I recognized the ice cream shop. The first time we came here, Suwon also bought a vanilla cone. She said vanilla was her favorite. Back then, her smile had been so genuine. I wondered now if that smile had been fake too. That evening, I went home. Suwon wasn't there. I opened my computer and started looking up Zhou Muyi. It was easier than I expected. Zhou Muyi. Sole heir to Xinyuan Group. Finance MBA from an overseas university. Current vice president of Xinyuan Group. His photo appeared in finance news. Tailored suit. Handsome features. An aristocratic smile. They'd been classmates in college. Supposedly, he'd been the campus heartthrob. I closed the browser and leaned back in my chair. A chill running through me. Xinyuan Group. Our company's biggest competitor. I'd worked at Mingyuan Technology for 8 years. Rising from intern to CTO, Mingyuan and Shenyuan had been bitter rivals in this industry for over a decade. We had the tech edge. They had the capital. We traded blows, each winning some, losing some, and my wife had been sleeping with the heir of our biggest competitor for 2 whole years. How much of our business strategy, our tech roadmap, even our internal personnel changes had she passed on to Zhou Muyi during those 4 years? I didn't want to think about it. I sent Suwon a message. We need to talk. She replied quickly. Okay. 10 p.m. Our usual coffee shop. The coffee shop was near the university. We used to go there when we were dating, when we were both broke. We'd split a latte and sit there all afternoon. The owner knew us and would always throw in an extra cookie at 10 p.m. I pushed open the door. Suwon was already there, sitting by the window with an Americano in front of her. She wore a camel-colored coat and had her makeup done perfectly. She looked more like a stranger than she ever did at home. I sat down. I didn't order anything. She looked at me, then pulled a manila envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. This is the divorce agreement. She said, I'm walking away with nothing. The house is yours. The car is yours. We don't have any joint savings. You should know that. I opened the envelope. A thick stack of papers. Everything was already signed. Only my signature was missing. You're in that much of a hurry. I looked into her eyes. She avoided my gaze. This afternoon, Muyi and I got our marriage license. A car's headlights swept across the window, illuminating half her face. There was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Like she was relieved. Like she'd finally gotten what she wanted. I felt the paper in my hands crumple at the edges. 4 years. I said, we were together for 4 years. And you tell me you've loved him for 10. What were those 4 years for me? A backup plan. A safety net. Lin Shun. Don't say that. She frowned. I do have feelings for you. It's just what? Just that it's different. She looked out the window, her voice drifting. You were good to me. So good. But that kind of good is tepid. Like plain water. What Muyi gives me. It's passionate. Even after 10 years apart. The moment I saw him again, my heart still raced. Lin Shun. You wouldn't understand. I understood. I understood everything. Plain water. I was plain watered. She'd waited 10 years for her fine wine. And now she couldn't wait to pour out this glass of plain water. Sign it. She said, let's end this amicably. I pulled a pen from my pocket. It was the Mont Blanc she'd given me for my birthday last year. She'd said a man should have a good pen. I'd been so happy then, thinking she really understood me. The tip of the pen hovered over the paper. Suwon. I asked her, did you ever love me? Even for one day? She looked at me. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt. Maybe. Or something else. But in the end, she only said, Lin Shun. The past is the past. Let's look forward. Okay. Okay. I signed. Stroke by stroke. Lin Shun. Each stroke felt like a knife cutting into my flesh. I pushed the agreement back to her. She picked it up, confirmed the signature, and put it in her bag. Then she stood up, took her coat off the back of the chair. Lin Shun, you're a good man, she said. You deserve someone better. As you want. I called out to her. She turned. Your mother's heart condition. The surgery last month. I borrowed $30,000 for it. From my year-end bonus. Since you're walking away with nothing, I want that money back. Her expression flickered. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. She turned and walked away. The coffee shop door closed, and the wind chime jingled. The owner walked over with a hot latte and set it in front of me. Here you go, young man. Your coffee. I didn't order that. The lady did. Said you only ever drink this. The owner smiled and walked away. I looked at the latte. The foam art was a crooked little heart, just like it had been all those years ago. I took a sip. The bittersweet warmth of milk foam and coffee burned all the way from my throat to my stomach. I set the cup down, stood up, and walked out. A light rain was falling. The streetlights blurred in the drizzle. I watched Sue Wan's car merge into the traffic and disappear at the end of the road. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the company internal directory. I made a call. Hello? Mr. Liu. It's Lin Shun. My voice was steady. I need to report something. About Xingyuan Group's bids for several projects over the past 2 years. Their pricing, our bottom line, and the technical proposals. The person on the other end listened in silence. The rain grew heavier. I stood under a street lamp, completely soaked, but I couldn't feel the cold. Where Sue Wan had once occupied my heart, there was now a hollow pit, like someone had uprooted a tree, leaving only a gaping hole. The rain poured in, drowning any warmth that remained. I put my phone away and wiped the water from my face. Not tears. I told myself, from now on, Lin Shun wouldn't shed another tear for Sue Wan. The last thing she said to me in that coffee shop was that I deserved better. How ridiculous. Better doesn't come waiting for you. You earn it. I looked up at the sky. Raindrops stung my eyes. Bitter and sharp. As you want. Zhou Muyi. What you owe me. I'll collect it myself. 3 days after signing the divorce papers, I quit my job. Mr. Liu was silent for a long time after I finished my report. I heard him smoke an entire cigarette on the other end of the line before he finally spoke. Shaolin. He said, Lin, you're the youngest CTO Mingyuan's ever had. Do you understand what it means to release the information you're holding? I do. I said, Xingyuan has been taking projects from us for 2 years. I always suspected an internal leak, but I never thought it would be her. Mr. Liu's voice was heavy. Are you sure? Are you sure your wife, ex-wife, has been feeding our trade secrets to Zhou Muyi? I have evidence. What Sue Wan didn't know was that on our 3rd anniversary, I bought her a new phone and backed up the data from her old one. I'd done it for sentimental reasons, save our memories, our photos, to look back on when we were old. Instead, I found 2 years of betrayal. In the chat logs. Sue Wan. A week before every major bid that would subtly pass our tech roadmap, pricing strategy, even the framework of our core algorithms, to Zhou Muyi. His replies were equally subtle. Sometimes a single sentence of praise was enough to make her happy for hours. I'd compiled everything into an encrypted file and sent it to Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu. Mingyuan lost 12 bids in the last 3 years. 9 of them went to Xingyuan. Our bids were always a little higher. Our proposals were always a step behind. Don't you find that strange? There was a long silence on the other end. Then Mr. Liu said, Lin, what do you want? Nothing. I said, I just want justice. When I handed in my resignation, HR was shocked. 8 years at Mingyuan. From intern to CTO. The youngest senior executive in the company's history. They said I was crazy. The market was tough. Xingyuan was actively poaching our talent. Leaving now would be handing our enemies a victory. I just smiled and said I needed some time off for personal reasons. No one knew what had happened at home. I didn't tell anyone about Sue Wan and Zhou Muyi. I wasn't the type to post a tearful essay online dragging my ex-wife. Not only was it humiliating, but more importantly, I wasn't about to show my hand on my last day. I visited my office one final time. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city's busiest CBD. The glass skyscrapers reflected the midday sun. Dazzling. I'd spent countless nights in this office, coding until 4 a.m., dozing for 2 hours on my desk, then waking up to fix bugs. Back then, Sue Wan would bring me late-night snacks. Chicken soup in a thermos, set on my desk with a gentle, Lin Shun, eat slowly. Don't burn yourself. That I still use that thermos. The lid was a little warped now and didn't seal properly. I'd never replaced it. From the bottom drawer, I pulled out that thermos. I wiped off the invisible dust with a tissue and placed it in a cardboard box. There wasn't much else in the box. A pen, a thermos, and our wedding invitation. Gold embossed lettering. Handwritten. I picked up the invitation and looked at it for a moment. Then I tore it in half and fed it into the shredder. RRR. Gone.as I walked out of the Minuan building. My phone buzzed. A text from Sue Wan. I packed your things. They're by the door. When do you want to pick them up? I didn't reply. Let her throw it all away. I took a cab to the apartment we'd shared for 3 years. The building code hadn't been changed, still our combined birthdays. The elevator rose to the 18th floor. The hallway was silent. Outside our door sat 2 cardboard boxes sealed with tape. A sticky note on top. Lin Shun. Clothes and daily items. Keys are on the shoe cabinet. She wouldn't even face me. I stood in front of the door. At the door I'd painted 3 times myself. The Spring Festival couplets I'd hung from a step stool while she steadied it below, laughing. To the left a little. No. Your left. She'd been so happy that day, saying it was our first spring festival in our new home, and we needed to do it right. Rituals. I took out my keys, inserted them in the lock, and turned. The door swung open. The apartment was empty. The wedding photo above the TV was gone, leaving 4 pale rectangular marks on the wallpaper. Like scars. The shoe cabinet still held my shoes, but all her heels were gone. The ceramic bowl we'd made together at that pottery workshop in Jingdezhen, the lopsided one, she called a one-of-a-kind masterpiece and forbade anyone else from touching. That was gone too. The masterpiece had left with its master. I walked into the bedroom. Half the walk-in closet was empty. Her dresses, coats, scarves, hats. All gone. Her skincare products and perfume were gone from the vanity, leaving only my razor and aftershave. On the nightstand sat our framed photo. Silver frame. Her choice. In the picture, Suwon was wearing a white dress, laughing in my arms until her eyes disappeared. I had more hair back then. I turned the photo face down on the table. Thud. Then I noticed an envelope on the nightstand. White. No stamp. Lin Shin. Personal. In Suwon's handwriting. Round. Loopy letters. Like a schoolgirl's. I opened it. Inside was a note. Lin Shun. I ate the cake from the fridge. I'm sorry. I hope everything goes well for you from now on. I stood there holding that note for a long time. The cake. The opera cake from our anniversary. I'd put it in the fridge and forgotten about it, waiting for her to come home, to be free, so I could give it to her. She hadn't come back that night, or the next. The 3rd day, I signed the divorce papers. I never thought about the cake again. She'd eaten it. While I was gone, she'd come back, opened the fridge, seen the cake, and eaten it. Why? Why would someone who betrayed you eat the last cake you ever gave them? Because it tasted good. Or because that even just a little. She couldn't let go. I would never know. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Then I picked up the 2 boxes, placed my keys on the shoe cabinet, and closed the door. Click. The lock engaged. I walked away and never looked back, moving into the urban village. The city's oldest, poorest neighborhood. On a day of pouring rain, I rented a tiny room on the top floor of a subdivided building. $800 a month. No elevator, no AC, shared bathroom. The cheap wallpaper was already peeling and moldy, crumbling at the edges. I set my cardboard box on the floor and opened it. Everything I owned. A few changes of clothes, a blanket, an old laptop, a thermos, a pen. 8 years of career, 3 years of marriage. Everything fit in one box. I booted up the laptop on the landlord's spotty Wi-Fi. Checked my bank balance. The number wasn't pretty. Suwon had said she'd walk away with nothing and leave me the house, but she'd forgotten the mortgage was still being paid. Most of my monthly salary had gone toward that and her mother's medical bills. What was left in my account wouldn't cover 3 months' rent. I leaned against the wall, listening to the rain hammer on the tin roof. Drum, 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 drum. Like a heartbeat. I thought about my father. He'd died when I was 18. Liver cancer. By the time they found it, it was too late. He was a programmer. One of the first generation. He coded in assembly. He'd never saved any money. It all went into what he called his dream. Before he died, he left me an old suitcase. He said it held the most valuable things he'd ever made. I'd never opened it. When my father died, I was in my rebellious phase. I thought he'd lived a pathetic life. 30 years of coding. Still a junior engineer. Couldn't even afford a better hospital room for my mother. On his deathbed, he'd held my hand and said, Lin Shun, take a look at what I've left you. I was annoyed and pulled my hand away that he died with the memory of me shaking him off. Now, thinking back, what a piece of shit I was. I pulled the suitcase from under the bed. Brown leather, frayed at the edges, rusted locks. I pried it open with a key. Inside were stacks of notebooks, all handwritten, dense code and annotations. My father's handwriting was ugly, but every character was pressed hard into the paper, leaving indents. The top notebook had a title on the cover: The Spark, Core Architecture version 3.7. Last modified, June 2008. The Spark. He called it The Spark. I opened it and read the first 3 lines. My hand started shaking. This wasn't just code. This was the core architecture of a completely new operating system, that a paradigm shift built on distributed computing and edge intelligence. Revolutionary. My father had conceived this 30 years ago, but the hardware didn't exist to support it. No one recognized its value. His proposals were rejected over and over. Eventually, he took everything home and never worked in tech again. He locked it all in that suitcase for 20 years. I flipped to the last page. He'd written a note that T.O. Lin Shun. Your father's greatest regret isn't being poor. It's not giving your mother the life she deserved. But I don't regret writing this. If one day the technology catches up, and someone can understand it, build it, then these 30 years weren't wasted. Lin Shun. Study hard. Don't be a failure like your father. Failure. He called himself a failure. I clutched that notebook, crouched on the floor of that shabby rental. The rain was so loud it sounded like the building was coming apart. I didn't cry. From the moment Soo-won confessed, I hadn't shed a single tear, but that night, staring at my father's shaky handwriting, my eyes burned like someone had thrown sand in them. Dad, you weren't a failure. I'm the failure. I let myself be played for 4 years. I was poured out like plain water, and I didn't even make a sound. I stood up, put the notebook on my desk, and turned on my laptop. On the blank project document, I typed the first line: The Spark OS. An industrial intelligence core architecture based on distributed neural networks. I spent 3 days and nights transcribing every page of my father's notebooks into my computer, translating them into modern programming languages, and building a preliminary validation environment. On the 4th morning, I bought a used graphics card from the internet cafe downstairs, plugged it into my laptop, and ran the first simulation. When the progress bar reached 100%, the system's response time was 3 times faster than I projected. I stared at the results, and a thin layer of sweat broke out on my back. This thing could change the industry. No, IT could disrupt it. I shut down the computer, washed my face, and changed into clean clothes. In the mirror, I was gaunt, hollow-eyed, unshaven. I picked up my razor and scraped off the stubble. I looked into my own eyes. The SU-1 wasn't there anymore. There was only a fire. That afternoon, I made a call to T.O., a former intern I'd mentored at Mingyuan, a kid named Chunyi. Sharp kid. He'd left for one of the big internet companies and was doing well. We'd stayed in touch. Chunyi. It's Lin Shun, Shingu. Holy crap. You're calling me. I heard you left Mingyuan. What happened? Let's meet. I'll tell you. I paused. Do you know any serious investors? He was quiet for a beat. You're starting something. Yeah. What direction? Building something my father spent 30 years on, but never finished. Another silence. Then, Shingu, I trust you. Let's meet. I hung up and stood by the window of my rental, looking out at the urban village. A maze of cramped buildings, laundry lines crisscrossing the sky, bed sheets flapping in the wind. Beyond it, the glass towers of the CBD glittered in the sun. Somewhere in those towers was Xingyuan Group's headquarters. Zhou Muyi was probably sitting in his VP office, sipping coffee, arm around Soo-won, thinking he owned the world. He didn't know what he'd thrown away. I reached into my pocket and touched the note. Soo-won's words. I hope everything goes well for you from now on. I looked at it for a long time. Then I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I hope everything goes well for you. Soo-won, you're wrong. The one who'll be fine is me. You're only going to get worse. I opened my laptop and started writing the business plan for the Spark. The sound of the keyboard echoed in the empty room. Like the ticking of a countdown. The seed my father planted 30 years ago was now in my hands, and I was going to set it on fire, burn down Shengyuan, burn down Zhou Muyi, burn down the cage of comfort Soo-won had built for me, burn a path of my own. A month later, the Spark's core architecture had gone through 4 iterations. Each version was more stable and more efficient than the last. The investor Chun Yi introduced me to was named Zhou Mingqian, early 40s, had backed a few solid projects in hard tech. I asked him to meet at a no-name dive in the urban village because it was cheap. $15 for a plate of twice-cooked pork and rice. I could afford that. Zhou Mingxian showed up in a gray jacket and a backpack, looking like a university professor. He glanced around with a slight frown, but didn't say anything that I slid the menu over. He ordered tomato egg noodles. Chen Yi said you're Ming Yuan's former CTO. He opened the conversation. Ming Yuan is top tier in this industry. Why start your own thing? Because what I want to build. Ming Yuan can't do that. I turned my laptop toward him. Mr. Zhou, take a look. I ran a simplified demo simulating a medium-sized auto parts production line. A traditional control system would need 12 servers. Data transmission latency averaging 300 milliseconds. My Spark system used a single-edge computing node. Latency dropped to 47 milliseconds. Energy consumption cut by 60%. With adaptive fault-tolerant scheduling built in, Zhou Mingxian stared at the data, his chopsticks frozen midair. The noodles had gone cold. You wrote all this yourself. The core architecture was from my father's 30-year-old manuscript. I said, I re-implemented it with modern technology and made extensive optimizations. Mr. Zhou, if this system deploys in industrial settings, every smart manufacturing solution in the country will have to be rewritten. He set down his chopsticks and stared at me for a long time. Lin Shun, he finally said, if you took this to Sheng Yuan, they'd offer you a 7-figure salary. I don't want Sheng Yuan's money. Why did I didn't answer? I didn't know him well enough to air my dirty laundry. Mr. Zhou, I said, I want to build this myself. I need seed funding. $100,000 for 15% equity. If you invest, you'll have priority for the first product. Zhou Mingxian took a sip of tea and thought for a moment. 100,000 isn't much. He said, but I have one condition. In 3 months, you present this system at the China Smart Manufacturing Innovation Conference. Live demo. Everyone who's anyone in the industry will be there. Including Sheng Yuan and Ming Yuan. If you can blow them all away, I'll lead the next round. Deal. The night I signed the investment agreement, I left the dive and walked out into the dark. The streetlights of the urban village cast a dim yellow glow on the puddles. I stepped through one, soaking my shoe, but I didn't care. In my pocket was the contract. $100,000 would hit my account in 3 days. I pulled out my phone and hesitated. Then I dialed a number. It rang for a long time before a weak voice answered. Hello, Auntie, it's me, Lin Shun, Yuan's mother. The woman I'd called Mom for 3 years. She had a bad heart. Last winter, her condition worsened. The surgery had cost $30,000, and Suwon couldn't afford it. I'd secretly asked Mr. Liu to advance my bonus to cover it. She'd recovered, but she'd need expensive medication for life. Lin Shun. Her voice was tired. I heard about you and Wan. She did you wrong. Auntie, don't say that. I stood under a street lamp, a stray cat rubbing against my ankle. I didn't move. How's your health? Have you been taking your medication? She was quiet for a moment. Then her voice broke. Lin Shun, you're a good boy. Wan just didn't have the fortune to keep you, Annie. From now on, her money is hers, and my money is mine. I kept my voice level. But what I promised you, that doesn't change. I'll deposit your medical bills every month. Just like before. Don't tell Suwon. Just let me still honor calling you Mom. On the other end of the line came muffled sobs. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Then I hung up. The cat was still rubbing against my legs, purring. An orange stray, so thin I could feel its spine. I crouched down and scratched its head. It squinted and pushed its head into my palm. All right, stop it. I can't afford to feed you either. I stood up and walked away. It followed for a few steps, then stopped and watched me disappear into the alley, back in my room. I took a cold shower, then sat on the bed and stared at my laptop. A message buzzed on my phone. Chen Yi. Shen Gu. I ran into your ex-wife at the mall today. She was with Sheng Yuan's golden boy. They were looking at rings at Tiffany's. I didn't reply. Chen Yi again. You okay? I typed 2 words. I'm fine. Then I flipped the phone face down and went back to coding. Days turned into weeks. I worked 16 hours a day, eating instant noodles, drinking cold water, falling asleep on my desk. The 3-month deadline was tight. Turning the Spark from core architecture into a commercially viable product meant endless work. Hardware adaptation, protocol compatibility, UI optimization, security hardening. Every piece had to be perfect. At my poorest, I had $230 left in my account. With a week to go before Zhou Mingxian's investment arrived, I budgeted $30 a day. Breakfast, steamed bun and pickles. Lunch, instant noodles. Dinner. Instant noodles again. There was an old woman selling tea eggs at the corner point 50 cents each. I bought 2 a day. One for morning, one for afternoon. At least I got some protein. My body crashed twice. Once after 3 straight nights of no sleep. My vision went black and I toppled out of my chair, smacking my forehead on the desk corner. Blood everywhere. I lay on the floor for several minutes before I could crawl back up. I pressed a tissue to the wound. Checked the mirror. Just a cut. I slapped on a Band-Aid and kept coding. The second time was a high fever, 103 degrees. I was delirious. I boiled water, soaked a towel, and lay in bed for a full day and night. That night, I dreamed of my father. He was sitting across from me, just like when I was a kid. Buzz cut. Thick glasses. Coding. I asked, Dad, what are you writing? He said, saving up a dowry for Lin Shun. I woke up drenched in sweat. The fever had broken. I sat up and looked at the notebooks scattered across my desk, and I laughed. A dowry. Huh. All right, Dad. I'll make sure your dowry gets the wedding it deserves. The beginning of the 3rd month. The Spark's first commercial-ready version was complete. I set up the demo environment, recorded a video, and sent it to Zhou Mingqian. He called me back with just one sentence. Lin Shun, I've secured your invitation to the Innovation Conference. Be ready. Everyone will remember your name. After I hung up, I paced the room twice. Then I opened another document. One I'd been compiling for over a month. The title read, Xinyuan Group, Financial Project Summary. It contained years of industry observation, combined with open-source intelligence analysis, plus internal documents I'd bought for $15,000 from a man claiming to be a former Xinyuan employee. That was half my savings at the time. What he gave me was damning. Screenshots of a shell company's bank statements showing large cash flows from a Cayman-registered investment fund. Even more critical, Zhou Muye's name appeared on that shell company's legal change records from September of last year. That right after Xinyuan had lost a major government contract to Mingyuan. Mr. Liu had been so happy he'd downed 3 extra shots at the company party, clapping my shoulder and saying, Lin, that was all thanks to your proposal. At the time, I'd wondered why the government chose us when Xinyuan's bid was lower. Now it made sense. Zhou Muyi had probably moved some money he shouldn't have, gotten caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and had to pull out of the bid. I didn't have solid proof. But the screenshots, the cash flows, the legal changes, they all pointed down a very suspicious path. I wasn't sure where that path would lead, but I wasn't in a hurry. Some bullets are best fired from close range. I closed the laptop and went downstairs for a proper meal at the dive. Twice cooked pork, kung pao chicken, tomato egg soup, 3 dishes, plus rice, $68 total. The owner had started recognizing me and gave me an extra half scoop of meat. Boy, you're too thin. Eat more. I cleaned the plate, even sopping up the sauce with rice. Back in my room, I stood at the window, breathing in the night air. The urban village was alive. Someone cooking downstairs. The smell of chili making me cough. Children running through the alley. Parents shouting slow down. Laundry flapping on the rooftop like colorful banners. I felt calm. Deeply, profoundly calm. 3 months ago, Lin Shun had been cheated on, lied to, and kicked to the curb. Slinking into this dump like a beaten dog. But tonight, Lin Shun held a technology that could disrupt an entire industry. He held a ledger of debts to collect, and he had a path paved under his feet. I wasn't in a hurry. Yuan and Zhou Muyi were probably in their honeymoon phase. Married, ringed, living in a penthouse, attending high society galas, praised by everyone as the golden couple. They'd probably forgotten all about me. The pathetic ex-husband, the jobless loser. To someone like Zhou Muyi, I was just gum on the sidewalk. But I remembered everything. I remembered that night when her phone lit up with the name Muyi, stabbing into my eyes like a knife. I remembered her wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her, telling me she'd always loved him. I remembered her signature on the divorce papers. Clean, neat, no hesitation. I remembered the wedding photo I'd turned face down. I remembered the opera cake she'd eaten and left a note for. I remembered it all. I opened my phone and scrolled to Suwon's chat. The last message was still from 3 months ago. I've packed your things. I'd never replied. I typed a few words, deleted them, typed again, deleted again. Finally, I closed the app and tossed the phone on the bed. Not yet. Suwon, wait until you're on the highest pedestal. Wait until everyone's watching. Wait until you think everything is perfect and complete. Then I'll reach out and pull the rug out from under you. I'll make sure you fall hard. The wind whistled through the crack in the window. carrying the smell of the urban village. In the distance, the CBD blazed with light, like another world. I closed the window, returned to my desk, and opened the Spark project file. One more line of code. My father was right. Once the technology is ready, the spark will set the prairie on fire, and the fire in my hands. It was meant to burn a whole wilderness. 2 weeks before the innovation conference, I did two things. First, I incorporated a tech company. Name: Spark Technologies. Registered address: my rented room in the urban village. Sole proprietor: myself. Registered capital: $100,000. Zhou Mingqian seed investment had arrived, and after RD expenses and basic living costs, I had just enough to set up the company, rent an office, and hire my first employee. The office was a 20-square-meter room in an old building in the south of the city. $3,500 a month. One desk, two chairs, a used printer, and a wall covered in Spark's system architecture diagrams. Shen Yi quit his big tech job to join me. He said, "Shen Gu, I believe you're going to make something big." I paid him $8,000 a month, less than a third of his old salary. He didn't complain, showing up early and staying late, working harder than me. Second, I reached out to someone. His name was Sun L. an engineer I'd mentored at Mingyuan for 2 years. He was solid, but 6 months ago, Xinyuan had poached him with an offer he couldn't refuse. When he left, he took me out to dinner and said, "Shingu, sorry if they're paying too well." I'd congratulated him. Everyone deserves to climb higher. But now, looking back, Suwan had probably been feeding my tech info to Zhou Muyi by then. Xinyuan poaching my people, but she'd probably suggested it, that I wasn't contacting Sun Lei to settle old scores. Though, he'd been at Xinyuan for 6 months, working in their core, RD division. He knew exactly what projects they were pushing. I needed what was in his head. That we met at a quiet bookstore cafe in the south of the city. Sun Lei looked rough, dark circles, messy hair. He ordered an Americano and stared at me, hesitating. "Shingu, I heard about your divorce." He was the first to break the silence. It was Su Wan and Zhou Muyi. "Right. Everyone at Xingyuan's been talking. It's all over. What are they saying?" I asked. "That Zhou Muyi's wife, that your ex, she used to be yours." Zhou Muyi said at a dinner once that he'd poached the technical director's wife from Mingyuan, which meant he'd effectively moved half of Mingyuan's tech department. Sun Lei looked embarrassed. "Shingu, I didn't mean to bring it up. That it's fine." I took a sip of tea. "I'm not here to talk about that. I want to ask you about Xingyuan's Tianshu project. Where is it now?" Sun Lei froze, then glanced around warily. "Shingu, I can't talk about that. I signed an NDA. I'm not asking for the core algorithms." I set my cup down and met his eyes. "Just the timeline. Bidding. Deployment. Delivery. Rough months. That's not proprietary. That you can find it online." He hesitated. "Finally, Tianshu is Xingyuan's strategic project for this year. A provincial-level industrial internet platform contract. Internal timeline. Bidding at the end of the year. First phase delivery by next March." "Shingu, what are you planning?" "I'm building an industrial OS," I said, "fully self-developed. From the ground up. It outperforms anything on the market right now, based on your timeline. If Tianshu bids in December, my product needs to be ready before then." Sun Lei stared at me for a long time, then suddenly laughed. "Shingu, you want to compete with Xingyuan? Just you, not compete." I smiled. "I want their project to fall apart right in front of them." Someone in the cafe was playing for Elise on the piano. Light and floating. Sun laid down his Americano in one gulp and set the cup down with a thud. "Shingu, don't go to Xingyuan. They'll make your life hell. I'm not going to Xingyuan," I said. "They'll come to me." That night at home, I started organizing the intel from Sun Lei. Xingyuan's Tianshu project was a provincial industrial cloud platform. Core requirements: low latency, high concurrency, multi-protocol adaptation. These were exactly the areas where Spark excelled. I flipped through my father's notebooks, reading his dense notes on distributed edge computing. Technical plans were racing through my mind. But technology and business were two different things. Having a great product wasn't enough. I needed them to come to me. So I did a third thing. I hired a friend who ran a tech blog to publish a story. The headline: Urban Village Programmer Rebuilds Next-Gen Industrial Intelligence System from Father's 30-year-old Manuscript. IT was a mix of heartstring pulling and hard tech. My father's story. Spark's core concepts. A few blurry screenshots. Within 3 days, it hit 100,000 views. Tech influencers shared it. The comments section was buzzing. I wanted the name Spark to shine a light in the industry. Shine it for Zhou Muyi. Shine it for Su Wan. Shine it for everyone who thought Lin Shun was finished. Sure enough, on the fourth night, Chen Yi forwarded me a message. Xinge. Someone from Xingyuan's tech center added me on WeChat. They asked if Spark was connected to you. I said I wasn't sure. Maybe it was your side project. Perfect. Let them ask around. Let them find out everything. Over the next week, I received 3 calls from recruiters, all from Xingyuan or its affiliates. Testing the waters. Was I interested in a role? Salary negotiable. I turned them all down politely, saying I was busy with my own project. But I left a door open. I mentioned to one of them that if Xingyuan was interested in technical collaboration, I'd be open to a conversation. That recruiter was efficient. The same afternoon, my contact info was passed to Xingyuan's strategic investment department. The next morning, an email landed in my inbox from a Zhang Li, director of strategic investment, Xingyuan Group. Official wording that they'd seen the article about Spark, found the tech direction interesting, wanted to set up a technical discussion. That I didn't reply immediately. I let them wait 2 days. Then I sent a polite response. I was busy preparing for the innovation conference, that if they were interested, we could talk afterward. Chen Yi asked. Xinge, why not meet them now? Because if I meet them now, they're looking down at me, evaluating me. I leaned back, watching the sunset through the window. After I show what I've got at the conference, and everyone knows the level of tech this is, they'll come to me with sincerity and urgency. Then I hold the cards. Chen Yi gave a thumbs up. Xinge, that's a pretty wild play. Gotta be wild to flip the table. I went back to my code. But my mind was on something else. Su Wan. She was Xingyuan's financial advisor now, Zhou Muyi's personal finance manager. She'd probably know about the strategic investment department's activities. If she saw the name Lin Shun in an email, what would she think? Shock? Disbelief? Or would she not even care? Convinced I couldn't cause trouble? Probably the last one. She'd never respected me. To her, I was plain water. Tepid. Nice. A pushover husband. She never imagined the man who quietly signed the divorce papers would come back months later with a torch to burn down her new happy home. Good. The less they see me coming, the harder they fall. On the weekend, I went to the hospital. Su Wan's mother was back in for a routine checkup. Her heart was acting up again. I carried a fruit basket into her room. She was staring out the window, and when she saw me, her eyes turned red immediately. Lin Shun, how did you? I was in the neighborhood. I set the fruit on the counter and pulled up a chair. Auntie, how were the tests? The doctor said it's nothing serious, right? She shook her head, then grabbed my hand. Her dry, wrinkled fingers ice cold. Lin Shun, tell me the truth. Are you still thinking about Wan? I looked at her weathered face, and a swirl of emotions churned inside me. She was innocent. She'd known nothing. Caught between her daughter and the men in her life. I was silent for a moment, then gently pulled my hand back. Auntie, Su Wan and I are done. I said, I'm just here to check on you. If you need more medication, I'll get it. Don't worry about anything else. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. That girl, she came here today, brought some Mr. Zhou, said he's her new husband. I asked her what happened to you, and she said you two had nothing to do with each other anymore. I was so angry I slapped her. I froze. She brought Zhou Muyi to see you? She did. The old woman wiped her tears. I told her to get out and never come back. Lin Shun, I'm so sorry. I'm the one who talked her into marrying you. I said you were a steady, reliable boy. I never knew she had someone else in her heart all along. I stood up and walked to the window. The sycamore leaves outside were starting to yellow. Autumn wind drifted in, cool against my skin. I took a deep breath and turned back to the frail old woman on the bed. Auntie, don't hit her anymore, I said. Who she's with is her choice. I wish her well. The old woman opened her mouth, but nothing came out. When I left the hospital, it was dark. I stood by the curb waiting for a cab when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A male voice, with a laugh in his tone. And a hint of barely concealed arrogance. Lin Shun. Zhou Muyi. My hand tightened around the phone, but my voice was steady. Mr. Zhou, what can I do for you? I heard you're working on a project called Spark. His tone was casual. I'm always looking for talent. Suwan used to talk about you. Said you're a great engineer. How about joining Xingyuan? Name your role. Name your salary. The VP of Technology position is open. You can bring your little project in-house as an incubator. In the darkness, I smiled. He'd come sniffing around, and he'd done it with this patronizing air, offering a job to the man whose wife he'd stolen. So noble, so superior. Mr. Zhou, I appreciate the offer, I said, but I have a bit of a problem working with my ex-wife's new husband. It's uncomfortable. There was a 2-second silence. Then his laugh crackled through the phone. Lin Shun, you're interesting. Find out I won't push. But your little spark. Playing around is fine. Going up against a company the size of Shenyuan. You've got a long way to go. Take care of yourself. He hung up. I put my phone away and watched the endless stream of headlights on the street. Zhou Muyi, you called to put me in my place. Did you think I wouldn't see it? Did you think I was still the same quiet engineer who just writes code? Long way to go. You're right. But you won't see the end of it. I got into a cab back to the urban village. An old song was playing softly on the radio. I couldn't make out the lyrics. I leaned back and closed my eyes, running through all the threads in my mind. Zhou Mingqian's investment. The innovation conference demo. Xingyuan's internal vulnerabilities. Sun Lei's timeline. The shell company's financial records. The legal change document. The web was slowly weaving together, and its target was pointed straight at Zhou Muyi and Su Wan. The cab stopped at the entrance of the urban village. I paid and got out. The orange stray was waiting at the corner, and when it saw me, it trotted over and rubbed against my leg. I crouched down and scratched it. It rolled onto its back, purring, all right. Once your big brother makes it big, I'll buy you cat food." The cat meowed like it understood that I walked into the alley. The sounds of the urban village rising around me. In the distance, the CBD lights still blazed, and somewhere in those lights was a window belonging to Zhou Muyi and Su Wan. Not long now. The net was almost closed. Just a little more time. The China Smart Manufacturing Innovation Conference was held at the South City International Convention Center. 500 companies exhibiting. 30-plus forums. Everyone who was anyone in the industry was there. My booth was in the corner. A small space with a laptop and an industrial edge gateway device. Next to it, a retractable banner reading, Spark Technologies, redefining industrial intelligence. On the opening morning, I wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to my forearms. I cut my hair short and shaved cleanly. Chen Yi stood beside me, nervously rubbing his hands. "Shingu, do you think they'll come? Everyone who needs to will come." I was fine-tuning the equipment. "Just focus on the demo. Don't worry about anything else." At 9:30 a.m., the hall started filling up. Attendees wandered from booth to booth, coffee in hand. My spot was quiet at first, until one visitor stopped to look at my system interface. He pulled out his phone and took a picture. His expression grew serious. He was a technical director from a mid-sized manufacturing company. After watching the demo, he asked over a dozen questions. System latency, protocol adaptation, fault recovery. I answered every one with real test data. He left his card and said, "Mr. Lin, let's talk in detail." Half an hour later, there was a line at my booth. Word was spreading. Spark's system demo was making waves. People were filming it and sharing it in industry groups. Social media posts were popping up. "Just saw a killer industrial OS." Mind-blowing that I noticed a group of men in dark suits standing at the edge of the crowd, whispering to each other. Chen Yi leaned in. "Shingu, those are Xingyuan people. The one in front. Zhang Li, their strategic investment director." I didn't look up. I kept talking to a client. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone else behind Zhang Li. A woman in a beige skirt suit, hair in a bun, carrying a Birkin bag. She stood behind the crowd, watching me from a distance. Her expression was complicated. Su Wan. She was here, standing among the Xingyuan team, watching her ex-husband, the one she'd dismissed as plain water, demonstrate a technology that could dominate the entire market. I kept my face neutral, continued my pitch. When I finally saw that client off, I glanced in her direction. She immediately looked away, pretending to scroll through her phone. But her fingers swiped over the screen without actually looking at anything. Around 11 a.m., Zhang Li walked over with his team. He wore a standard professional smile and extended his hand. Mr. Lin, I've heard a lot about you. Zhang Li, strategic investment, Xingyuan Group. I shook his hand. "Mr. Zhang, your system's performance in low-latency industrial control is very impressive." Zhang Li glanced at the data streaming across the screen. "Have you had any experience working with large enterprise groups?" "Spark is new," I said with a smile. "But technology doesn't need credentials to speak for itself. If you're interested, Mr. Zhang, feel free to run a test yourself that the data is real-time." One of his engineers stepped forward, made a series of operations under my guidance. A few minutes later, the engineer's expression changed. He whispered something in Zhang Li's ear. Zhang Li's eyebrows lifted slightly. Then his smile widened. "Mr. Lin, Could we find a quiet place to talk? Of course. I glanced past him. I have a few other clients this afternoon, so let's keep it efficient. Behind him, Suwon hadn't said a word, but I could feel her gaze on me. Thick, sticky air that I didn't look at her. I led Zhongli and two others to a seating area near the hall. Chinyi stayed at the booth. I opened my laptop, turned it toward them, and pulled up a concise proposal. Mr. Zhong, let me cut to the chase. I flipped to the architecture page. Your Tianshu project. I understand the underlying requirements. Traditional centralized cloud architecture has inherent bottlenecks in high concurrency, low latency industrial environments. Spark is entirely edge native, with distributed scheduling. You've seen the latency numbers. If Tianshu uses this foundation, your delivery timeline can be cut by at least 4 months, and costs by over 30%. Zhang Li's eyes lit up. But I shifted gears. There's a condition. Your existing engineering team would need to do the upper layer application migration, and the core interface modifications must be led by me. If that's acceptable, we can discuss deeper collaboration. Your terms are reasonable, Zhongli said, but you're worried about a startup's ability to deliver. I finished his thought. I understand. Let me add a clause. Up front, I'll only charge basic RD fees, full payment upon successful system acceptance, and if my system causes any project delays, you set the penalty amount. Zhongli studied me, then smiled. Mr. Lin is very confident. I leaned back, fingers interlaced on my knee, because I can afford to lose. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. Suwon said nothing the entire time. Zhongli asked a few key questions, then nodded, saying he'd take it back to the senior team. As they were leaving, Zhongli stood and shook my hand. Suwon walked past me and paused for just a moment. She spoke, her voice so low only I could hear. Lin Shun, you've changed. I turned to look at her. She was perfectly made up, even more beautiful than the day we divorced. But there were faint dark circles under her eyes that her concealer couldn't quite hide. People change, I said. Suwon, you called me plain water before. Plain water left out either evaporates or freezes. Guess which one I am? She pressed her lips together and didn't answer. Then she followed Zhongli away, her heels clicking on the floor. Quick, like she was running. When I returned to the booth, Chinyi had already finished with the next client. He leaned in and whispered, Shingu, how'd it go? The fish took the bait. I unscrewed a water bottle and took a long drink. Now we wait for it to swallow the hook. On the second day of the conference, Xinyuan sent a formal letter of intent, inviting Spark Technologies to participate in the Tianshu project's underlying technology bid. When Zhou Mingqian heard the news, he called me with a smile in his voice. Lin Shun, Xinyuan came to you. That's a brilliant move. Mr. Zhou, I'm going to need your cooperation for the next phase. Tell me. I lowered my voice and outlined the plan. There was a few seconds of silence on the line before Zhou Mingqian spoke again, his tone cautious. Lin Shun, that's risky. What if they don't sign? They will. I stared out at the gray sky, because in their eyes, I'm just a poor fool whose wife was stolen and who got kicked to the curb. They won't believe an ant can bite an elephant. Zhou Mingqian was quiet for a beat. Then, all right, I'm in. Over the next 2 weeks, I had 6 online meetings with Xingyuan's tech team. Their designated liaison was a senior architect named Wang Rue. A trusted man of Zhou Muye's. Wang Rue was technically competent but arrogant, questioning my proposals like he was looking for flaws. I knew what this was. Zhou Muye's way of throwing a little grit in the gears of his ex's husband. I took it all in stride. Fixing what needed fixing, patiently explaining what didn't. Every meeting, I was professional, efficient, humble. Wang Rue's guard dropped. He started revealing more details about Tianshu in our technical discussions. I took careful notes, cross-referencing them with my father's framework, and found 3 points where I could plant hooks. That night, in my rented room, I pored over those 3 technical notes. Chinyi was munching an apple, watching me sketch on paper. Shingu, what exactly is your plan? I put down my pen and told him. First, Spark's core system had 3 interfaces with microscopic timing parameters I'd intentionally left flawed. Under normal conditions, the latency was insignificant. But if all 3 interfaces were triggered in a specific pattern, a cumulative error would build up over 10 minutes and cause the entire control chain to crash. This feature appeared in none of my documentation. Second, I'd reveal one of the interface optimizations to Xingyuan before signing, pretending I'd just discovered an improvement. Wang Rue would insist on adding it to the contract's technical appendix. And that would be the trigger. Third, I'd add a clause with a heavy penalty that if Xingyuan's project failed due to Spark's tech issues, I'd pay double the RD fee. Looked like insurance for them. In reality, when they ran system integration, following my optimization would trigger the 3 interfaces cumulative failure, crippling Tianshu's control layer, and buried in the fine print. If Xingyuan modified the underlying interface configurations themselves, Spark was exempt from liability. I wrote that last line with a steady hand. Chunyi tossed the apple core in the trash and dusted off his hands. Shingu, you're handing them the knife and letting them stab themselves. Wang Rui's too arrogant to read the contract carefully. I said, he'll just see me as a pushover engineer. Easy pickings. The signing ceremony was held in Xingyuan's top-floor conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows. The whole city skyline laid out before us. Sunlight blazed across the long conference table. I walked in with Chunyi. Zhou Muyi was at the head of the table, flanked by Zhang Li, Wang Rui, and Suwan sat at Zhou Muyi's right hand. A laptop and documents in front of her. She wore a navy business suit, hair pinned up. Efficient, distant. But when I walked through the door, I saw her fingers unconsciously tighten around her pen. Zhou Muyi stood, his smile wide, hand extended. Mr. Lin, good to see you again. I shook his hand. Dry, strong, a condescending gleam in his eye. I returned the smile. Mr. Zhou, I look forward to a fruitful partnership. Of course. He released my hand and gestured to a seat. I hear your tech is solid. I'm excited about this cooperation. 1-1. Pass out the contracts. Suwan stood up and distributed copies to everyone. When she reached me, her fingers trembled slightly as she placed the document on the table. I looked up at her. She darted her gaze away and returned to her seat beside Zhou Muyi. I opened the contract and read it line by line. Just as I'd expected, Wang Rui had included my optimization in the technical appendix. In bold, marked as mandatory. I suppressed a smile and kept flipping. The penalty clause was untouched. Double RD fees if Spark failed. The liability exemption was still there. Wang Rui must have considered it boilerplate legal language. Not worth a second thought. Mr. Lin, any issues? Zhang Li asked. I closed the contract and set it on the table. Looking at Zhou Muyi. No issues. If you're ready, we can sign. Zhou Muyi smiled, picked up his pen, and signed his name with a flourish. 3 bold strokes. I picked up my pen and signed to Lin Shen. 2 characters, stroke by stroke, just like the day I'd signed the divorce papers. But that day, I was passive. Today, I was in control. That day, I'd lost everything. Today, I held the key to locking Xingyuan's entire Tianshu project. Suwan watched me sign, her lips parting slightly, but I didn't give her a chance to speak. I handed the contract to Chunyi, then stood and extended my hand. Mr. Zhou, pleasure doing business. Pleasure. Zhou Muyi shook my hand, beaming with confidence. I walked out of Xingyuan's headquarters with Chunyi. The sky was dark, the city's neon lights beginning to glow. Traffic streamed below us. I stood on the steps, breathing in the cool evening air. Chunyi clutched the contract folder, voice low. Shingu, what's next? Now we wait. I looked out at the blurred skyline. Wait for them to deploy happily, test happily, and then fall apart happily. The wind was strong, flapping my shirt. I pulled out my phone. A message from Suwan popped up. Only 2 words. Be careful. I stared at those 2 words for a long time. Then I locked the screen and put the phone back in my pocket. Be careful. Suwan, you should be worried about the man beside you. The fine wine you chose. Me. I stopped being plain water a long time ago. 3 months later, Xingyuan's Tianshu project entered the integration phase. I'd been quiet these 3 months. Xingyuan had progress meetings every 2 weeks. Wang Rui was still arrogant. I played along. Cooperative. Agreeable. I answered everything they asked. Didn't offer anything they didn't. In Xingyuan's eyes, Spark Technologies was a pushover. Lin Shun was just a doormat whose wife had been stolen. Now working for her new husband, Zhou Muyi stopped attending the tech meetings. The project was on track. Not worth his time on a former CTO. He was busy with industry forums, appearing in finance magazines. I sometimes saw his photos online. Sharp suit, standing at a podium, Suwan on his arm in a glittering gown. The perfect display couple. I scrolled past one photo on social media. Comments like Xingyuan's prince and his princess are such a perfect match. Heart emoji. I looked at it for 2 seconds and swiped away. No emotion. Real closure isn't cutting off contact. It's seeing that person's photo and feeling nothing. I didn't hate Suwan anymore. Hate was an extension of emotion. I had no emotion left for her. But that didn't mean I'd stop what I'd started. 7 days into integration. The first failure hit 2 a.m. Shinya's call jolted me awake. Shingu, we've got trouble. Wang Rui called 6 times. Tianchu's control layer crashed at 1:47 a.m. The whole cloud platform is down. All production lines offline. I sat up in bed. Voice calm. Which interfaces did they touch? Wang Rui said they deployed your optimization. Then this afternoon, they added an extra load balancing layer. I checked the logs. It was the load balancer that pushed the call frequency on your 3 interfaces above the critical threshold. I leaned against the headboard. The sky outside still dark. The urban village wrapped in a gray silence. After a pause, I said, Chenyi, tell Wang Rui we're investigating remotely. Keep him calm. Don't say anything else. Got it. I hung up. I wasn't sleepy. I checked the time. 2:17 a.m. In a few hours, Xinyuan would be in full-blown chaos. Tianchu's client was a key government department. Strict on delivery. Every day of delay meant penalties. Xinyuan had cut delivery time to the bone to win the bid, but almost no buffer. The hole I dug for them had collapsed right on schedule. 9 a.m. Xinyuan convened an emergency tech meeting. I joined via video. Wang Rui's face on screen was ashen. Eyes red-rimmed. Clearly sleepless. Beside him sat Zhongli, Xinyuan's CTO Mr. He, and Zhou Muyi. Zhou Muyi's expression was worse than I'd expected. His jaw was tight, his fingers drumming on the table. The casual arrogance was gone. Mr. Lin, Wang Rui started. His voice strained. We've reviewed our entire implementation. We followed your optimization exactly. Why did the system crash? Was your solution fully tested? I leaned back, looking at the strained faces on the screen. Mr. Wang, my solution went through 3 rounds of internal testing. All successful. But that load balancing configuration you added last night. My documentation clearly specified a recommended configuration range. Exceeding that range is beyond my warranty. It's spelled out in the contract. Wang Rui froze. He flipped through the contract appendix. Seconds later, his face went from ashen to white. Mr. He took the contract, read it, then looked at Zhou Muyi. The air in the conference room seemed to congeal. Mr. Zhou, Mr. He said, his voice low. The appendix does include a note about the configuration limit. Mr. Wang's team may have overlooked it. Zhou Muyi's drumming fingers stopped. He looked at the camera and smiled. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Lin, you're saying this is our fault. Mr. Zhou, I remained polite. Section 11. Clause 2 of the contract. If the client modifies or exceeds the configuration limits of the underlying interface, resulting in system failure, the contractor bears no liability. You can check right now. The room went silent. Zhongli was already flipping pages. Suwan was seated in the corner, hands clasped on the table, eyes fixed on me on screen. I couldn't read her expression, but she was rigid. Zhou Muyi stood up, took the contract from Zhongli, and flipped to the page. He stared at it for a few seconds. Then he slammed the contract on the table. Bang! Lin Shun. He laughed, but the anger was barely contained. That's a pretty neat move. Mr. Zhou, I understand your frustration. My tone was calm. The priority now is fixing the system. I can send someone on site, but the recovery will take at least 2 weeks. If the client can be flexible. Zhou Muyi cut me off. Our grace period is 3 days. Every day passed, that is 120,000 in penalties. Lin Shun, you did this on purpose. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, silent. The tension in the room reached its breaking point. Zhou Muyi took a deep breath, said something to someone beside him, and walked out. The door shut. On the screen, Wang Rui's face was like death. I disconnected the video. Chenyi, who'd been barely holding it in, let out a long breath. Shingu, what do you think they'll do? They'll try to blame us. I unscrewed my thermos and took a sip of water. But the path I left them. Dead end. That afternoon, Xingyuan sent a formal letter claiming our optimization had critical technical flaws, demanding we take full responsibility and pay damages. The letter was aggressive, backed by reams of technical reports and data. I read it and smiled. Then I packaged our backup logs, test reports, and the contracts clearly marked configuration limits, and sent everything to Zhou Mingqian. Mr. Zhou, it's time to move on the media. He replied with one word. Done. The next morning, several top industry tech outlets simultaneously published an investigative piece. The headline was understated. Tianchu project in technical turmoil. A market leader's arrogance and predicament. The content was anything but understated. It laid out the entire sequence of events, with screenshots of contract clauses, configuration limit notes, and independent third-party technical analysis. The verdict was clear. Xingyuan had exceeded configuration limits during integration, causing the crash, then tried to shift blame to their partner. The article went viral. Xingyuan's stock dropped 4% that day. Then came the client's formal inquiry, demanding a rectification plan within 3 days, or they'd initiate penalty proceedings. Zhou Muyi was cornered. Word came that he'd held back-to-back all-night board meetings, tearing into Wang Rue in front of everyone. Wang Rue resigned on the spot, but resignation didn't fix the problem. Tianshu was dead in the water. Penalties were burning a hole in Xingyuan's balance sheet, and Spark was clean. Untouchable. On the third day, I met Su Wan at a coffee shop near my office. She'd asked via message, "Lin Shun, meet me." I replied, "Okay." She looked thinner than before. Collarbones prominent, cheekbones high, dark circles barely hidden under makeup. She sat down, hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Steam rose between us. "Lin Shun." Her voice was rough. "Please let me go. If Tianshu fails, Xingyuan's entire year is ruined. His father, it'll be very bad for him." I looked into her eyes. Those eyes I'd kissed 1,000 times. The early mornings when she'd be half asleep. Long lashes, and I'd lean in, and she'd mumble, "Don't." Now those eyes held anxiety, exhaustion, panic. But not a shred of regret toward me. Su. I set down my cup. "You're asking me to spare Zhou Muyi. He's my husband. When he stole someone else's wife, did he ever consider that she was someone else's wife?" She bit her lip. The coffee shop played soft music. Someone at the next table laughed. She stared down at her own reflection in the cup for a long time. Then, barely audible, "Lin Shun, I know I wronged you, but business is business. You can't destroy Xingyuan over personal grievance." I laughed. "I couldn't help it. Su. You're right. Business is business. So tell me, when you passed Ming Yuan's trade secrets to Zhou Muyi during our marriage, was that personal or business? Because you loved him. So you made Ming Yuan lose 12 bids. Have you calculated what those 12 bids were worth?" Her face went white. "How do you? You thought I was a fool, didn't you? A cuckold who didn't even know his wife was cheating for 2 years. A pushover who'd just signed the divorce papers and disappeared." I set my cup down slowly. 2 years ago, the night you started talking to Zhou Muyi, I was up late writing Ming Yuan's Q4 core algorithm. While you were texting him, "I miss you," I was working on a proposal due to the client the next day. When you sent him my technical roadmap, I was still stupidly trying to make the project better. My voice was flat. No anger. Su. I know everything. Because I backed up your old phone. All the chats, all the money transfers, all the emails you sent him. The backup email address you used. It's your birthday. Remember?" Her lips were trembling. The coffee cup wobbled in her hands. "Lin Shun." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it would. You just loved him." I finished for her. "You loved him so much you were willing to destroy everything I'd built." Her tears started falling, dark spots spreading on the tablecloth. "But I don't hate you anymore." I stood up and drained the rest of my coffee. "Now I just feel sorry for you. You bet everything on one man. When you lose, you'll have nothing." I put on my jacket to leave. She grabbed my wrist. "Lin Shun, tell me what you want. Money. Anything. What will it take for you to let him go?" I looked down at her hand, at the hand that had made me soup, tied my ties, worn a wedding ring. It was shaking now, clutching at the last thread of a desperate gamble. Su. I gently pulled my hand away. "Go ask Zhou Muyi about that Cayman fund. Ask him about the money transfer on the legal change records. After you do that, think about whether you should be begging me." She froze. I walked out of the coffee shop. The door chimed. Crystal clear, like shattered glass. I stood in the sunlight and closed my eyes. The autumn wind carried a dry, clean scent. I took out my phone and messaged Chenyi. "Send the shell company materials to the financial media and the SEC. Anonymously." Chenyi replied instantly. "Got it. Shingu. All the way." I typed. "All the way." I put my phone away and walked into the crowd. Whatever happened behind me, the woman crying in that coffee shop, it had nothing to do with me anymore. The kindness I owed had been repaid when I paid for her mother's medical bills. The debts I needed to collect had only just begun. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the pavement. I kept walking. Steady. The news spread faster than I expected. Financial media picked up the anonymous tip and ran a deep investigation. Xingyuan Group's shell company mystery. The heir's hidden cash flow. The article tied together the Cayman Fund, the legal changes, the suspicious money trail. The evidence chain was airtight. The article ended with a question. Tianshu project and technical chaos at the same time. Is there a connection? The reader decides. 3 hours later. The article had over 1 million views. That afternoon, Xingyuan stock hit the limit down circuit breaker. Then the SEC issued a formal inquiry, demanding a self-investigation and a timely response. Zhou Muye's father. Xingyuan's chairman, Zhou Guodong, flew back from a vacation in Hainan. Word was, the moment his plane landed, he had the driver take him straight to the office and shut Zhou Muyi in his office for 3 hours. Someone saw Su Wan come out with red-rimmed eyes. I sat in my urban village room, scrolling through the news on my phone. The orange cat that I'd named him Spark was curled at my feet, purring. He'd shown up 3 months ago, and now he just wouldn't leave. Chinyi said it was a dumb name for a cat. I said it was fitting. We were both strays. Spark stretched and draped a paw over my ankle. I scratched his head and kept reading comments. The comments split in two. Some condemned Xingyuan's management chaos. Others said the leaker had malicious intent. A few comments mentioned Spark Technologies, noting the coincidence of the name with the project disaster, hinting I was involved. I didn't care. Spark was clean. No one could touch us. 3 days later, Zhou Guodong called me directly. The old man's voice sounded weary, but his tone was polite. Mr. Lin. Zhou Guodong. Chairman Zhou. I set down my keyboard and leaned back. What can I do for you, young man? We've never met, but I've heard your name many times these past few days. He paused. The technical issues with Tianshu.my team has reported. Responsibility is Xingyuan's. We accept that. Contract terms. We respect. We'll compensate. Adjust. Whatever it takes. But Mr. Lin, those accusations about my son. Was that you? I didn't answer directly. Chairman Zhou, may I ask you something? Go ahead. 3 years ago, Mingyuan and Xingyuan bid on the East China Smart Logistics project. Your bid was only 0.3% lower than ours, and Mingyuan won on technical advantage. But Zhou Muyi later told your board it was a strategic concession. Do you know how that 0.3% figure was calculated? Silence on the other end. Chairman Zhou, some things are easy to investigate. Some people in your company have said things they shouldn't, and moved money they shouldn't. I'm just a tech guy. I don't care about the politics. But you should. It's your company. More silence. Then, Mr. Lin, I understand that he hung up. I looked out the window. Someone on the rooftop was folding laundry. Bright-colored sheets flapping in the sunset. I took a deep breath. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long finally eased a little. Zhou Guodong was a shrewd man. He'd run his company for over 20 years, and he knew what could be covered up and what couldn't. He knew when to cut his losses. I'd made my point clear. Either he cut off his son's hands, or I'd take Xingyuan's entire arm. He would choose. The next day, the news came. Xingyuan Group's board issued an announcement. Zhou Muyi had resigned from his position as vice president and all related duties. For personal reasons. Brief. No explanation. Then financial media broke another story. The SEC had launched a formal investigation into Xingyuan's related party transactions. Zhou Muyi was barred from leaving the country. 1 more day later, Su Wan came to see me. She didn't text ahead. She showed up at Spark Technologies' office. It was a weekend. Chinyi and I were there, revising plans. The door wasn't locked. She pushed it open. I looked up. Su Wan stood in the doorway in a gray trench coat, hair loose, no makeup. Like all the color had been drained from her. Chinyi glanced at me, took the hint, and stood up. I'll grab some coffee. He slipped past her and closed the door. It was just us. Sit. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat. No designer bags. No perfect makeup. She seemed to have shrunk. Her shoulders slouched, hands twisting in her lap. Her nails. She used to get them done every month. 10 perfect little works of art that were bare now, with a small chip on one. Lin Shen. Her voice was hoarse, like sandpaper. Muyi. He's been detained. Embezzlement. A large sum. His father can't protect him. I didn't say anything. Her voice broke. He blamed me. Said part of the money went to the Cayman Fund, and I'd signed off on it. He said we were in it together. But Lin Shen. I didn't know. He told me it was a normal investment. She was crying now. Tears splashing on her hands. She wiped them with her sleeve. Mascara streaking across her cheek. Lin Shen. I have nothing. My mother's back in the hospital. When I went to see her, she kicked me out. She said she never wanted to see me again. And Muyi, he wants me to take part of the blame. Says if he gets out, he'll compensate me. Says I'm just a woman anyway, so it doesn't matter. She looked up at me. eyes red and bloodshot. Lin Shun. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Everything you did for me, my family. The money. The late-night pickups. The patience that I thought it was just plain water. And Muyi was fine wine. But now I know wine burns. Plain water keeps you alive. She was sobbing now. Her head on the table. Shoulders heaving. I looked at her. I'd imagined this scene so many times. Suwon kneeling before me. Crying. Saying she loved me. Begging for another chance. In my imagination, it felt like justice. I'd look down at her. Laugh. And walk away. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pain. Not anger. Just nothing. Like watching a stranger fall. She cried for a long time. Then she lifted her head. Wiped her face. And in a voice choked with tears, Lin Shun. Can you give me one more chance? Can we start over? I swear I'll never leave you again. I'll do whatever you say. We can move back to the countryside. Buy a small house. Live a normal life. She grabbed my hand. Her fingers were icy cold. Just like her mother's had been in the hospital. I looked down at that hand, at the one that had lived in my heart for 4 years. The one that had ripped it out and thrown it away. I gently pulled my hand free. Suwon. She looked up. A final flicker of hope in her eyes. Like a candle about to gutter out. You were right about one thing. I said. The past is the past. We look forward. That final flicker died. Her lips trembled. Tears poured again. In that moment, she looked old. Lines around her eyes I'd never noticed before. Lin Shun. You're not going to forgive me. Are you? I don't hate you. I said. But I can't love you again. You call me plain water. And you were right. Plain water keeps you alive. But plain water has a temperature too. I was hot water. You held me in your hands for 4 years. And then you threw me away because I wasn't exciting enough. She was frozen. Now you want to pick me up again. But the water hasn't changed. The person holding it has. The room was silent. Wind billowed the curtains. Sunlight flickering across the floor. A distant car horn sounded. Everything normal. As if nothing had happened. Suwon slowly stood up. Her coat brushed the desk. She looked at me one last time. Her lips moving soundlessly. Then she turned. Opened the door. And walked out. As the door closed, I heard muffled sobs echo down the hallway. Growing fainter. I sat at my desk. The coffee Chinyi had brought was cold. I took a sip of bitter. Spreading across my tongue. My phone buzzed. Chinyi. Shingu. You okay? I'm downstairs. I replied. I'm fine. Come up. I stood and walked to the window. Down on the sidewalk. Suwon's small figure moved slowly through the crowd in her gray coat. Someone bumped into her. She stumbled, steadied herself, and kept walking. She didn't look back. I watched until she disappeared at the corner. Spark, the cat, emerged from under the desk and rubbed against my ankle. Meowed. I crouched and picked him up. He nestled in my arms, purring. All right, I muttered. It's over. Chinyi pushed the door open, holding 2 hot coffees. Shingu, here's a fresh one. The other one's probably cold by now. I took the cup. The warmth seeped through my fingertips. Chinyi looked at me, hesitated. Then finally, Shingu, what's the plan now? I put the cat down and took a sip of hot coffee now. I turned to look at the project roadmap on the wall. Zhou Mingxian's got a state-owned enterprise interested in a strategic partnership. Meeting tomorrow. The system's ready. Reputation's built. And Xing Yuan's penalty payment. It's in the contract. Not a cent will be missed. I smiled. So what's next? Chinyi grinned. We go big. Really big. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating this small, 20-square-meter office. The architecture diagrams on the wall glowed. Like the whole room was on fire. I took the cold coffee, poured it down the sink, washed the cup, and set it on the shelf. Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and continued working on the project I'd named Spark. Before I began typing, I let a few images pass through my mind. My father's notebooks in that rented room. The cracked window of the urban village. Zhou Muye's smug smile at the signing. Suwon's sobbing face on my desk. The old woman's wrinkled hand in the hospital. I pressed each image down, one by one, like snuffing out matches. Then I started typing. When the sun rises tomorrow, Lin Shun will be standing in a new place. The ruins behind him belong to the people who were meant to stay there. When winter came, the orange cat had grown noticeably rounder. I'd moved. The new office was in a CBD high-rise. A whole floor for Spark Technologies. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced the building where Mingyuan used to be. Every morning, standing at that window, I'd remember the young man in a plaid shirt, interviewing 8 years ago. The countless nights at his desk. The first scarf he bought for Suwon with his first paycheck. She'd twirled around the room, laughing, saying it was beautiful. Those memories were like faded photos now. Yellowed at the edges. Not painful, just faded. Spark Technologies closed its series A round the month. We secured the state-owned enterprise's strategic investment. Zhou Mingqian led the second round, bringing 2 new investors on board. The valuation had grown 40 times over our seed round. Chun Yi was promoted to VP of Engineering. He passed out his new business cards everywhere. Grinning ear to ear, the state-owned enterprise partner was a national-level industrial infrastructure project. Our Spark system passed rigorous security certifications and performance tests and was designated a key recommended tech solution by year-end. The first batch was delivered. Client feedback exceeds expectations in every category. 3 consecutive quarters of perfect project acceptance. Once, I gave a keynote speech at an industry summit. The topic, the path to independence for domestic industrial operating systems. Hundreds of people in the audience, that industry leaders, investors. After the speech, a crowd gathered to exchange business cards. I scanned the room and saw Mr. Liu. He stood at the edge of the crowd, smiling, waving. I made my way over. He clapped my shoulder. Xiao Lin.no. Mr. Lin. Well done. Mr. Liu. How's Mingyuan? Thanks to you, he said. With the evidence you gave us, we did a full internal overhaul. Security's tight now. All the leaks plugged. We won 4 major bids last year. Xingyuan. Well, he lowered his voice. We went straight for them. No contest. I smiled and didn't respond. I knew exactly what Xingyuan's situation was. The Tianshu project had been taken over by another state-owned company. Xingyuan paid heavy penalties. Their annual performance tanked. Zhou Muye's case had moved to trial. Embezzlement. Financial document forgery. His lawyers were looking at 10 years minimum. His father, Zhou Guodong, had been forced to resign from the chairmanship. Xingyuan was suspended from trading by the SEC. Acquisition rumors were everywhere. As for Su, I heard from Chun Yi that she'd resigned from Xingyuan, moved out of Zhou Muye's penthouse, and found a job as an ordinary accountant at a small firm. Her mother was still in and out of the hospital. Every month, the medical bills were paid anonymously through a charity called Caring for Elderly Health. The old woman didn't know who was paying, but Suwon probably guessed. Chun Yi said she'd cornered him at a bank once, crying, asking if it was me. Chun Yi didn't say anything. I didn't want to know more. That night, I opened a bottle of red wine. Nothing fancy. $20 from the convenience store downstairs. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at the city. Traffic streamed below. Neon lights painted the sky in shades of orange. Spark the cat lay on my lap, purring, tail twitching. I held my glass and thought back over all the events of the past year, from the anniversary cake to the divorce signing, to that leaky room in the urban village, to my father's dusty notebooks, to the afternoon I signed the contract in Xingyuan's top-floor conference room, to the day Suwon cried and begged me to start over. All the images spun through my mind like a carousel, then slowly came to a stop. Half the wine was gone when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. But I recognized the name. Lu Zijin. She was a co-founder of another tech company I'd met at the innovation conference. They specialized in AI applications for smart manufacturing. We'd talked for half an hour, exchanged contacts, and then never really kept in touch. Mr. Lin. Hope I'm not interrupting. Her voice was bright, smiling. I have a project I'd like to discuss. Are you interested? What kind of project? Our company is working on a smart port management system. We need a high-reliability industrial control layer. I read your architecture talk from last year's summit. Great ideas. Want to grab coffee and talk details? Outside, a plane passed low overhead, its wing lights blinking. Sure, I said. You set the time. I hung up, set my wine glass on the table, and scratched Spark's head. He woke up, stretched, and yawned. Pink gums and all. Spark, I said to the cat. How about a new beginning? The cat ignored me, jumped off my lap, and trotted to the kitchen door to wait for food. I laughed, stood up, and opened a can of cat food. As I pulled the tab, it cut my finger. A tiny bead of blood. I put my finger in my mouth, then continued pouring the food. Spark buried his face in the bowl, purring, tail held high. I stood in the kitchen, watching him eat. Then I remembered something. I reached into the back of the cabinet and pulled out the old thermos. The one with the warped lid. I washed it out in the sink and set it upside down on the drying rack. Tomorrow morning, I'd fill it with coffee and take it to the office. The insulation wasn't great, and the lid wouldn't seal properly, but it didn't matter. The office had a microwave. After washing the thermos, I went back to the balcony and finished the half glass of wine. The night air was cool, but my wool jacket was just warm enough that I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted folder I'd named Settlement.it. Held all the evidence about Xingyuan and Zhou Muyi, all the backups of chat logs with Su Wan, all the contracts and records from the divorce. That I looked at the folder's name. My finger hovered over the screen for a few seconds, then I hit delete. And confirmed, the folder disappeared. A small empty space appeared on my phone's storage. I stared at that space and felt something. A corner of my heart empty out as well. From now on, there was no room in Lin Shin's life for the name Zhou Muyi. Su Wan had gone from my closest person to a stranger, to an irrelevant piece of the past. I locked my phone and set it down. The night was quiet. Distant car sounds drifted up like fading tidewaters. I leaned back, looked up at the sky. City lights made it hard to see stars, but occasionally, through breaks in the clouds, one or two glimmered faintly. Tomorrow, coffee with Lu Zijin to talk about the project. Day after, training for our 30 new engineers. Next month, our system's first phase at the largest port in northern China. So much to do. So many new things waiting. As for the old things. The betrayals, the tears, the anger, the pain, they hadn't completely disappeared. I'd just tucked them away somewhere I couldn't reach. They'd shaped the person I am, but they no longer defined the person I'd become. The balcony door swung slightly in the wind. A soft sound. I looked back into the living room. Spark was curled up on the couch, tail over his face. Passed out. I smiled, stood up, turned off the light, and walked back inside. The new life had started long ago. Today, I just finally admitted it. Before I closed the bedroom door, I glanced back at the kitchen. The thermos sat quietly on the drying rack, ready for tomorrow morning's coffee. The lid was bent. It didn't seal properly, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about the container. It was about what was inside. And as long as it was warm, it was enough.